Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is going to be a good one. This is the 2024 Kawasaki Z650 RS, and that is the 2024 Kawasaki Z650. Now, first of all, I am filming in Canada, so if you're going to be upset with me for saying Z, these are Canadian bikes. It's not me that calls them Z, it's Kawasaki Canada, and we're here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports. They are the #1 volume Kawasaki dealer in the country, and if you have any questions about either of these bikes or anything in the Kawasaki lineup that I don't answer in this video, make sure you let me know in the comments below, because Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals gives me complete access to their entire vehicle lineup, and I can come back to you again and again and again to make sure we have a complete video database of all the information that you would want. So I also want to say, if you're in New Brunswick, check these guys out, because it is the middle of January right now, and this showroom is packed with motorcycles as far as I can see. It's absolutely amazing here. All right, so in this review, what we're going to do is we're going to compare these two bikes. Now, there is a change to this one for 2024, so we'll get to that in just one second. But we're going to talk about some of the similarities and differences, and there's some misinformation that I hear a lot about both of these bikes, so we're going to address that in both of them. So if you're interested in either of these bikes, we're going to go through a full in-depth review, and we're going to really compare some of the differences between them to try to give you a really good idea of which one might be best for you. So obviously, there may not be a lot of cross-shopping if you love this look or love that look, or you really hate this look or hate that look, but there are some key differences other than looks that I think people should be aware of, and that's what we're going to cover in this review. So let's just start with the Z650, a couple things there to sort of set the stage to make it clear with the Z650 RS. All right, so let's deal with a misconception with the Z or Z650. First of all, this is essentially a Ninja 650. Now, one of the very common reasons that people jump to this bike over the Ninja 650 is not just because of styling, but people have a perception that this bike is more upright and therefore more comfortable. And that argument could be made. My argument would be, unless you have a back issue, a wrist issue, some other sort of physical issue, although this is a different seating position with handlebars as opposed to clip-ons than the Ninja 650, it's not exceptionally more or less comfortable. It's not exceptionally more or less upright. The Ninja 650 is still a fairly upright. This is not the same as the ZX6R or ZX6RR. That is a leaned over sport bike. This one here, that was close, good thing kickstands up, but this one here is an upright bike, more so than the Ninja, only by a little bit. So really the decision you need to make between this and the Ninja 650 is the styling. Yes, it's more upright, but it's not a whole lot more upright. And that also is important context for the Z650 RS that we're going to talk about, because it is also a fairly upright bike, but a very different seating position than this again. So why would you get this one, and what's the real benefit? Well, this one, the sporty styling, the way your knees can hug the tank, it is going to be something that's very comfortable on a racetrack type environment, but also very good on the street. So it does have certainly more of a sporty style to it, but the practicality of the tank over here is a little different. The other thing is that this tank is a little bigger. We're going to talk about specs between the two when we get them back in, but let's pull the Z650 RS in here right now and compare a couple little specs on that one as well. So now let's clear up a misconception about this bike. So some people sort of feel that this isn't a true retro bike, and I think the thing that they're talking about is they would like to see sort of the dual forks or dual suspension back here, the sort of little bit more laid back kind of thing. And the Z650 RS is a nameplate that has been around before. The previous Z650 RS, the historic one, was a 4-cylinder model, and some people say this should be a 4-cylinder. So first of all, let's clear the misconceptions up. This 2-cylinder is more powerful than that 4-cylinder, and this is not designed to be a retro bike in all of its feeling. It is purely designed to be a retro looking bike, or to have that retro flair to it. The frame on this bike, the engine on this bike, the suspension, even the wheelbase, to a centimeter difference, is identical. And the centimeter difference probably has to do with the way that this frame, the subframe, is slightly different on this one than on that one, to accommodate the different seat height compared to the higher rear seat and the different style seat. But basically, all of the key components, like all of the frame, all of everything in here, wheels, tires, brakes, suspension, so many things, are identical between these two. This is designed to be just as sporty as that one. And a lot of people say, oh, this is a softer ride than that one. And I'm saying that one, the Z650 that's off camera. That's not the case. If you want a fully retro Kawasaki, go with the W800. That has the old feel, the old style. Everything about that is kind of like that 60s bike brought back into the modern 2024. This one is still a modern sport bike. This is the Ninja 650 with a little bit different bodywork. So pros and cons here as we sit across it. You can see the seating position on this one as well. It is a hair taller on the actual spec of the seat, and it would feel that way too. It probably leans you a hair back closer as the handlebars come up a little bit taller. This one has added traction control for 2024. That's a really key piece to this one because the value equation was questionable in the past because this costs more than the identical Z650. But this one didn't used to have traction control, and now it does. So from a value perspective, let's talk about all these. We'll get them both back in the shot and start really doing a comparison now. So one of the problems with doing YouTube videos about these bikes is you always have that really smart commenter that says, buy this one or buy that one because it's a better deal. So let's be clear on just my own biases just so we're clear. First of all, I've driven this engine for many, many years. I owned a Versys 650, same engine, really quite liked that engine, loved it quite a bit. And then I bought the Z900 RS, which is actually a 950. Last year I bought it. So it's a 2022 model. I bought it in 2023, and I quite like that. So I totally get the retro style thing, but I could have bought a Z900 and in theory that would be a better value. Now that depends on how you determine value. If you just want to look at features, the TFT display here has cell phone connectivity, that makes it a better value. Up until 2024, this one had traction control in 2023, that one did not, and that made this one a better value as well. Not only was it cheaper, it had more on the spec sheet. So now the spec sheet has kind of evened out by adding traction control there. There's still cell phone connectivity with this digital dash, but you have things like an analog dash. Now, some people say the digital dash is worth more and all kinds of things, and that's fine. Here's the key with value. You're also buying the looks. And yes, Kawasaki is making you pay for the looks. You can make that argument, but the better seating position and the look is something that you have to live with for a long time. That might have value to you, and it may not have value on a spec sheet. So keep in mind, there's not a whole lot of difference between these two bikes, but that one is a little bit more, and you have to deal with, is that a value for you? So when we talk about value, let's start taking a closer look at the front. We'll go front to back on both, and then we're also gonna take a look at the dashes on both because there's some key differences there. Let's do that right now. All right, so taking a look at the front wheel on this Z650 RS, you have a couple things going on. First of all, you can see this paint color. I hope it shows up well after editing. Paint colors, especially reds, never seem to transfer perfectly, but this is a reddy, orangey color. It is stunning in person. It's got great metallic on it. It just looks super cool. And out of all the Z650 RSs that I've seen in different colors, I love this color the best. So that's a personal preference, but that's something worth noting. This has gold wheels. My personal bike has gold wheels as well. I think they look really cool with the right paint scheme. So, you know, I'm a fan of them as well. You may not be a fan of them. But braking, there is a difference in brakes here. So I always say when you look at the front wheel of a bike, you can see the manufacturer's intent. Now these are Dunlop Road Sport 2 tires. This is actually better tires than on the Z900 RS. And they are matching the Z650, Ninja 650 as well. So Road Sport 2 tires, you know, you can make your case about how good they are within a lineup, but they are a step up and they're decent tires for this class, certainly sporting tires. So you right away see this is not a retro tire, it's a sport tire. The brake system here is also supposedly identical, but there is a key difference. You can see the retro here, you have a circular disc. Let's jump over to the Z650 and look at the difference. So I think you can see right away what's the difference here. The disc here, although the measurements are the same, the spec sheet says it's the same, this is a pedal style disc, and they've been doing this in Kawasaki for a while, but they're starting to move away from it. So obviously this wouldn't look retro. They went with the round style discs, but everything in the braking system is actually the same. They both have ABS. The fender style here is different. You have a little more styling down here to sort of match the bigger bikes. You have a little bit of a protection here to sort of simulate as if this was an upside down fork. It's not. But again, alloy wheels on both, same tires on both, same braking system, but different pedals, and they are dual disc, and you do have the ABS like we mentioned. Taking a look at the heart of the bike, you have identical engines, sort of. Mechanically, these are identical. The casings on the outside of this one is identical to that. But down here, you have a different pattern on the outside casing right here than you do on the Z650. So we'll keep an eye on that before we switch shots. I'll let you know when we're going to switch so you can sort of pay attention to that. Exhaust system, also identical. Everything there is identical other than the fuel tank is smaller here by 3 liters than on the Z650. So we'll talk about that when we move over to the Z650. But you have a power plant that is essentially identical. If you need range, being identical power points, if you need range, having 3 more liters in the Z650 is going to give you that extra range over this retro model. So taking a look at the casings here, really the only visual difference is right there. I know it doesn't matter to most people, but just so you know, some people say because of that there's a different engine, there's a different thing. It's the same engine in both. So let's talk some of the specs like the fuel tank differences. Let's also talk about the weight difference because Kawasaki does some interesting things on their website and we should talk about the weight difference. It's not huge, but there may be a little bit even though it appears identical. Let's talk about that. So I've got my spec sheet in front of me. Let's talk about some of the specs that are different. We mentioned the 3 liters difference in fuel. This is a 15-liter tank, and this is a 12-liter tank. So not massive tanks on both, but they are very fuel-efficient engines. Now, what's interesting is you have to keep in mind that the tank size is different because we have to talk about the curb mass. And there's 2 stars on the website when you check it out, and that clarifies how they measure this. Now, this is a wet weight. So the fact that this one is 412 pounds on the website and this one is 412 pounds, that's not a dry weight, that's a wet weight. First of all, it makes them very light, very maneuverable motorcycles, but the identical weight wet should be just a hair different if it's not, because Kawasaki has an explanation down and I'm not reading it right now, but it's something like 90% set on fuel. The point I'm trying to make is Kawasaki likely has a consistent measurement on how they do weight. So technically this is just a hair lighter as well. I don't know that that matters. The other thing is we mentioned all the same specs, same frame, that kind of thing. Seat heights are a tiny bit different, taller on the Z650 RS. But the wheelbase is also 1 centimeter different or 0.2 of an inch difference. And like I said, the only thing I can figure, because when you look at the frame mounts and everything else, is it must be just a slight difference in the way that the rear end is set up here to have the different rear seat. So again, identical frame, identical suspension travel on all of them. Some people think that this one behind me, this RS model, will be a more cushy ride because of the look. It's not. They are identical suspension. So let's keep going through. So before we move on and cover the dashes of both these bikes, which are quite different, one interesting to point out, for 2024, you do have the LED signal lights on this bike. Both bikes have LED headlights, even though they are different styles. So you have that nice white bright light with both, of course, the round headlight here. But LED signal lights are interesting because my 2022 900 RS does not have LED signals. So they've gone fully modern on both of these bikes, really identical as far as function, but of course a different style to the LED lights. Now let's take a look at the dash. So now let's take a look at the dash on the Z650 RS. Now this is Kawasaki's fully modern dash. You've got a lot going on here. So we'll show you the controls in a second here, but you do have gear indicator. You have a nice sweeping tach, 10,000 RPM red line, large easy read speedometer. You can invert the colors on this. So this looks a little blue. The tach looks a little blue to me as I'm filming. I'm not sure how it'll turn out in overall editing, color correction, that kind of thing. But this is very gray in real life. Very clear, very easy to read. It's very difficult to film a TFT display and have great clarity, so I can tell you that in person this is very, very clear. And then down here you have things like your trip odometer. So there's trip B right now, it's odometer down there, and trip A over there. And then on the bottom you can also see a number of selections down here. That's your range, your average speed, your total time, your battery, and of course your fuel efficiency. Now right now it's listed as kilometer per liter. You can do liters per 100 kilometers, miles per gallon US, UK, that kind of thing. And there's some instant and average and back to range. So pretty good information in here, and very cleanly laid out in a modern display. If you want a modern bike, you want a modern display, and you have that here. The other thing worth mentioning is the traction control. Basically, it's 3 levels, so off, and then level 1 and level 2. Generally speaking, I would drive around level 1. You can make your choice. Level 2, more for rain, and then 0 just cuts it all off if that's what you want. You'll notice that it still has a neutral light there, ABS light, extra lights around the outside. Even though you have a gear indicator showing neutral, it's still got that neutral light. So that is a very nice full-color TFT display, but the other thing is this can connect you with the Rideology app. That gives you some benefit as well, where you won't get that in the retro style dash that we're going to show you right now on the RS. So taking a look at the Z650 RS dash, you see those traditional gauges here. Now this of course fits in with the style of the bike, but it also doesn't really take away a lot of information. There is some differences. Let's turn the bike on. First of all, the key is more central, more retro sort of location. So in the center of your dash is a digital display. Sometimes that will flicker on camera. It looks like we're doing pretty well with it right now. We're gonna zoom right into that center display right now so you can just sort of see a little bit about there. First of all, you still have that traction control. Again, that's new for 2024. It was not there in 2023. It's identical. So it's off is 0, then level 1, level 2. You've got things like little warning lights in there. One big red warning light up top here to warn you something's wrong. You've got other warning lights in the gauges like you would normally. Down at the bottom says trip A, so let's cycle through what you have here. So trip A, trip B, you have your fuel efficiency, which is your instant fuel efficiency, your average fuel efficiency, then your range, and then you do not have things like the battery, and you do not have things like the timer that you had on the TFT display. Other than that, I don't think many people are going to miss that too much. It is there. One other thing that's interesting to note is a lot of the mile per hour bikes have a mile per hour and kilometer per hour thing. If you have a Canadian bike like this one is with the Canadian gauges, you only have a little bit cleaner look, but you only have the kilometers per hour listed on your dash. So it's just something worth noted. You won't have miles per hour listed. If you do cross the border, you're going to be doing some calculations because there's no way to bring that to this dash. Overall, pretty good way to lay out the information. Temperature gauge there, fuel gauge on this side here, but nice clean way to lay out information, but again, a different look on both. So staying with the controls on the Z650 RS, it doesn't matter which bike we show you, this section on both bikes is identical, and it's a pretty good section here. You can't see right on your screen right now, but where my finger is pressing is a little flash to pass, so that will flash your high beams. Then you have high beams and low beams right there, signal lights, horn. You do have hazard lights, four-way flashers, whatever you want to call them right there, which is nice to have. And then you can use the selection switch for your cruise control, and you can use the up and down switch to choose various things in the dash. So for instance, when I'm cycling through on this bike, I can go up or down to cycle through everything. On the TFT display bike, the down button cycles through the menus that were on the bottom, things like the fuel efficiency, the battery, that kind of thing. And the up button here cycles through the things that were a little bit above that, so trip A, trip B, and the odometer. They work essentially the same. If you ride one bike, you'll be familiar with it on the other bike, but this is identical. Let's flip around and show you the clutch lever because that also has some nice features, and that is also identical on both bikes, which a lot of people are surprised about. So again, we're still on the retro bike here, but you have the exact same gear or clutch lever here and brake lever as you do on both bikes. So it's the same type of thing, same system. So this currently is set to number 5. This is an adjustable lever. Now, one of the benefits with this is you can bring it down to number 1 and see how that's much further away. So I'll put my hand in the same spot, sort of the first knuckle there, we'll bring it back to the 5, and it's almost the second knuckle there. So you do have a good reach adjustment here. I like to have it sort of just in the middle there for your clutch lever. Again, clutch lever and brake lever are adjustable. So this is not just to fit smaller hands. The benefit of this is you can also kind of change the way the clutch, the grab point feels on a bike like this just by adjusting that lever. So it's just something that's nice to have as well in there. Now, one thing that's interesting is the Versys 650 for 2024 and the Vulcan S for 2024. They share an engine with these bikes, but they do not get a slipper and assist clutch. The Z650 RS does, and the Z650 the regular one does. So a lot of people assume because the Vulcan S and the Versys don't have it, that the retro bike may not have that slipper and assist clutch. It does. Both bikes have it, and that is identical on both bikes. Let's just talk about that advantage really quickly on why that might be important to you. So slipper and assist clutches were brought in on the racetrack to help performance, but for most riders in this class, it's probably going to be more of a safety feature. So let's talk about how it's a safety feature and a couple other safety features on these bikes. So slipper and assist clutch, basically what it does is if you have a lot of revs, do a downshift and dump the clutch, on a bike without the slipper and assist clutch, your rear wheel can kind of dance around because it can actually lock up with the engine back pressure. What the slipper and assist clutch does is allow the clutch to slip just a little bit to try to prevent the wheel from slipping. It's a nice safety feature if you're doing some, major downshift, major dump the clutch, lots of revs, that kind of thing. So it's a nice safety feature that keeps your wheel in traction as much as possible. So that's a real key piece to both these bikes. With that slipper and assist clutch, you have your traction in line. Now, the other side benefit of that is you end up with a lighter clutch pull, which is just nice to have in traffic and around town, which both these bikes are probably going to spend some time doing. But when we talk about traction, ABS brakes are standard across the line. You also have traction control, and that's now on both of them. Now, again, these bikes probably don't need traction control on a hot sunny day on a dry road. But cold weather tires, you could still slip these tires for sure. I've driven with this engine before and I've done it. And also in rainy situations, it's very, very nice to have traction control. So both these bikes, that slipper assist clutch is a contributing factor to making them easy to drive. The lightweight makes them easy to drive. The power, actually, although exhilarating, it still makes them easy to drive. It's a very tractable power. And then you have good traction, good safety features. So easy to drive is a real big part of these two bikes. So now let's wrap up by talking about some of the advantages of each bike, one over the other. And I'll do that really quickly by just sitting on it again. So I'm about 6 feet tall. I just want to show you back and back the benefits of just sort of sitting on one. So again, seating position here. I think the pegs are in relatively the same spot. We'll just double check. I could be wrong when you see that we move from one to the other. But there's my seating position here. Definitely a more upright seating position. I can feel very spacious. The other advantage this seat is going to have is it's going to be better for a passenger, in my opinion. Now, this one's not bad. It's not tiny by any means. The 650 class actually has a bigger pad than several of the other bikes in the class, but it is worth noting that you do have that. This one here, a little bit more leaned over, not really that much more comfortable, but the seat angle does push you into the tank. So it's encouraging you to get into the tuck position. It's not in any way uncomfortable, but it's definitely a more sporty feel. So again, a lot of people are gonna feel that this is the more sporty bike. Purely from a driving perspective, it's really not, because the suspension frame, all those pieces like we talked about are all the same. So let's talk about some advantages of this and that, of this bike over that bike. A lot of people would assume that this bike, because of its probably a little bit more upright seating position, might be the better long distance tourer. That is kind of my opinion, but there's a few things that you have to keep in mind. A slightly smaller fuel tank is worth noting, and there is no wind protection. Now, the benefit of this style bike is there are a number of aftermarket accessories to have any level of windshield you want, because you have a traditional headlight in a traditional mounting position and traditional handlebars. And what that means is you could get a windscreen on here of virtually any type. The other thing is, with this style of bike, it's very common to see some sort of side bags. There's lots of aftermarket options. Interestingly, Kawasaki doesn't have any branded side bags that fit this bike in their accessories catalog. This bike actually does have a branded accessory. You can put a top box from Kawasaki on the back here. So again, having a little bit larger fuel tank, having the Kawasaki branded top box is an option for you, but it is usually a little harder to get, side bags on this kind of thing, or it can change the look. And to my opinion, that's why Kawasaki has that top box. That top box is sort of sporty styling. They don't really have anything that's not this sporty styling that would fit on this, and there are a lot of aftermarket options. Either one of these bikes would be good for a longer distance. Honestly, I would still choose this one just for the seating position overall. If you're going to a racetrack, the way you can hug the tank here is going to be a difference that you may want to keep in mind. But aside from that, what are the benefits of each one? Basically, yes, this one is a little bit more upright. If you're looking at the Ninja and you want something more upright, this is still the Ninja 650 when you consider frame and everything else, and it is more upright. This one is very, very similar to the Ninja 650, and you're choosing styling, in my mind, more than comfort. The other thing is the fairing on the Ninja 650 does give you a few more power port options. I believe you can have a 12-volt plug underneath the seat on this one here. I don't see anything there. A couple other things worth noting. I believe this one has, yes it does, it has a helmet lock on the side. This one, that's an accessory to do that. Both these bikes are going to be really practical around town. So how do you choose between which one you want the best, or which one you like the best? To me, it's just simply style. Which one has the best style? This one, although the seat is taller, is no more intimidating. You do sit more upright. So that is the most upright 650 other than the Versa 650. Both of these are good value. This one is lower price. And again, value comes down to what works for you. If you're taking a passenger regularly, I think you should go for this one. If you're not taking a passenger regularly, you could go for this one. Both have rubber padded foot pegs. A lot of them don't. A lot of other bikes in this class don't have rubber padded foot pegs for the passenger. So there's a lot of similarities there. Mirrors are different shape, but both very functional. So really, at the end of the day, it does come down to style. The change for 2024 is if you're going for the retro bike, in my mind, if you can spring for the extra cash that a 2024 will be over 2023, it does get you traction control. why not go for traction control if you could? So there you go. There's my overview of the Z or Z650 versus the Z or Z650 RS. These ones, of course, are Canadian, so they're Z. I'm filming here at Jim Gilbert's Wheels and Deals, Jim Gilbert's Power Sports. Again, the #1 volume Kawasaki dealer in the country. If you made it this far, do me a favor, subscribe to this channel. We're gonna have a whole lot more reviews and comparisons. We're gonna cover everything Kawasaki and a whole lot more on this channel. So make sure you subscribe. Thanks everybody for watching.